I'm back, and you're right, I am. Tony from TonyMckenzie.com. Well, what have we got for you today? Well, I've got this mate. We'll call him a mate because he's reasonably a mate, yeah. And he bought a Gibson Les Paul, and it cost him about, he got it cheap, just $1,000 or $1,100. About £600 or £700, that is, in English money, you know, in real money. And here it is. Fabulous looking thing. It says here, custom art, Gibson since 1894, historic. Ah, it all looks great. And I thought, well, what a great deal he got. And, well, I did, until we started to looking a bit closer. So let's just open the lid and see what's in here. Oh, there's no lock at the back. Well, that's a bit of a funny giveaway for a Gibson. All the Gibsons I've ever seen. Oh, hold on, it's broke. Okay, well, I crowbar my way into it on the broken lock. And wow, what a great looking guitar. You can't see much of it from there. Let me see if I can pull it down a bit. It all looks cool, yeah? Well, let's flip it out onto the table and see what you get for that money. I thought it was a great deal, didn't you? Wow, and here it is. What a fantastic looking guitar. I mean, look at the top on that, man. And you know, you've got those classic 498 pickups, and I think they're 492s or something like that. Now, it hasn't got the bridge on because that's all in the case and things like that. Let me just put this down a minute. Now here's the problem. It's a copy. He got ripped off big time. You know, that's just something I hate. To see a guitar that's been put together specifically to mislead people. To mislead people into spending a lot of money on what turns out to be basically nothing like a Les Paul. Even though on the face of it, it looks like a Les Paul. It's designed specifically to mislead you and misrepresent a product that actually is one of the world's best products, and that's a Gibson Les Paul. So let's take a closer look at it and do a comparison against maybe a real Les Paul, so I can maybe get across to you what you should be really looking for, so that you don't get caught out by these cheap and nasty guitars that will never be a Gibson Les Paul. And even though they look something like, by the time you get to the end of this review, you will understand that this cannot be a Gibson Les Paul. Even if you change the pickups, even if you're this, even if you're that, just trust me on this, it's not the same. Actually, before we do that, let's just think about, say, somebody like Slash, who's got that Derrick Les Paul. That's a Les Paul, isn't it? Well, no, it isn't. But the man, Mr. Derrick, isn't one of these people. He intentionally made a guitar to be exactly the same as a Les Paul, sounding great, with the same design, same features, probably the same pickups even. I don't know. All the same sort of things that you get in the real deal. But then he sold them a little bit cheaper, I think, at the time. So hence probably why Slash went along and bought one, or was given it, or, well, who knows? I don't really care. But what I do care about is that solution is a completely different solution than this solution. This is here to rip people off absolutely big time, and it's just ridiculous. And the worst thing about it is you'll see these guys all over the internet. You'll see them if you already haven't, and they'll be claiming what a fantastic guitar for my $200 it is, and look at how great it sounds out of the box and all that crap. Listen, I'm not a Gibson aficionado completely. I've got Gibson guitars, but I've also got loads of other guitars. But I can tell you this, those people are semi-loony. It's not the same guitar. It doesn't sound the same, it absolutely doesn't feel the same, and the construction is completely different. Completely different. It's so different, it's silly. And anybody that gets caught out, well, they probably bought that guitar on the internet, because if you were standing in front of it and you know what I'm going to show you, you will never buy one of these unknowingly, and you will never have some character ripping you off for $1,000 or $1,100 or even $2,000 or $3,000 or pounds. It's that simple. So let's go and take a closer look at this, because I really do want to get across to you what it's all about. One last thing. Now, this video has been recorded on a brand new camera, and sometimes you'll see it zoom in and out a little bit, or like this. On subsequent videos, that's going to go away, but for the next couple of 3 videos, which I've already recorded actually, you're stuck with that. But you'll see the quality of the videos will be much improved over what I had before. Anyway, on to the review. I'm looking forward to showing you this because I really want you to be fully aware of the crap that's on the market. Hold on. Well, here we are in front of it. Nice. Very nice. Fabulous top. That's what I like. Don't you? Well, the only problem with this guitar is it's not a Gibson. It's one of those cheap Chinese knockoffs. And it is a knockoff. It says Gibson on the top of the neck and all the rest of it. And it all looks pretty good. All looks pretty real. All looks pretty like it's going to be great. Unfortunately, it's not going to be great for many reasons. We're going to talk about just a few of them today. Because I hate to see people getting ripped off, don't you? And in the case of this guitar, a guy loaned this guitar to me. I don't own it. But, well, frankly, he got ripped off in a very devious way, I thought. And some of the things I don't like about this guitar are the things that you don't just easily see unless you know what you're looking for, and then you do easily see them. But you know, a lot of people would buy this guitar and they get pushed around the internet even as genuine guitars, as this one was indeed. Let's take a look at the bridge. Just a simple bridge for starters. Here it is. Now let's set it there a moment, if it's going to sit. And what you'll notice, straight off, if you look at these grooves here, you can see them. Actually in the, you know, the little string bit, we'll call it that. I forgot what they call them. Don't worry, it's my age. Well, if you look at them, what you'd see on a real Gibson Les Paul, let's imagine you went to Gibson and you bought one of these bridges. Well, what you're going to see is one that's got no grooves in, because that's how they come, in case you didn't know. And there's an awful lot of people that didn't actually know that's how they come. You can see the grooves in this. Let me see if I can sort of get in a bit closer. I'm not sure I can. Okay, well there we are a bit closer. And as you can see, the groove in there, it's a bit like a valley. To say that it's deep is the wrong word. Now, all the Gibsons I've ever seen, all the real ones, don't come like that. As I said, what you do is you take your file and you file a tiny little groove in, just enough for the string. But these are like the Grand Canyon. So first look at the bridge. It's a bit of a problem. Turn it over. It's got no name. See that? At all, no name. Now this bridge is a little bit reminiscent of like the Jimmy Page bridge. You can see it's got its little piece of wire going across here. You see that? And round the end, just to supposedly hold in the screws. That was the original design, I believe. Or one of the original designs. Doesn't matter if it was the original. The point I'm making is, look at the piece of wire. And you can see it's all dangling around. It doesn't actually hold anything in. In fact, it's bent. It's basically crap. That's the nicest way I describe that. Take a look at the metal that was also present on the other guitar. You can see that on this guitar it's all very, very uniform, and it actually does fit behind the head of every screw. And that's the way it was originally designed. Just the same as the one on Jimmy Page's in this case, and not on the one from China. At least it could have been China. It was likely to be China. Now hopefully you'll also see just how fine those grooves are. Extremely fine on these little pieces. You'll also note that they're not actually in the centre. They've been cut depending on the guitar. On the cheap ones, they're always in the centre, end of story, and some of them are like a valley, like I showed you. Now, moving on to this bit, all looks good. It's just like a Gibson one, doesn't it? Yeah, it does, till you see no name. I have to be honest, the quality of this one isn't that bad. It's no real deal, so let's get that out of the way. Now I'm not going to screw this guitar apart. Suffice to say that if you actually do look underneath this, you'll find that I think I'll probably say ABR or Gibson underneath, and these screws are tight in the holes. There's none of this moving around like we saw on the Chinese product. So it acts as an extremely good anchor for the strings. Very good indeed. Now, I'm drawing your attention at these early stages of looking at this guitar, at the things that you might not actually notice too well over the internet or in somebody's boot, or I don't know, wherever you buy one of these pieces of junk. But the thing is, if you know about it, you know where to look, don't you? When we get looking a bit further down at this guitar, which we're going to cover most things, you'll find that, well, to be honest, you couldn't really mistake this if you fell off the back of a truck. That is, if you know what you're looking for. But after this video, you should do. You should have a very good idea what you're looking at. Moving on a little bit further, you'll see these here. These adjusters for the the bridge. Can you see the diameter across here? Well, you'll see that it's smaller than on a real Gibson. In fact, it's about 1/4 of an inch smaller. So the diameter is not quite right, and neither is the amount of play. You can see that. You don't have this sort of play. You can even hear it. You don't have that in a Gibson. End of story, period. It's not there. Let's look at this one. Well, this one's tight. This one seems reasonable, doesn't it? Well, it does, but not quite. Because you're back to the same old thing. Let's take it out. Is it going to come out? Oh yeah. Well, it looks similar, but it's got an awful lot of play in it once again. So everything isn't as neat and tidy as what you'd like it to be, I guess. Well, there's no guess about it, is there? You can see for yourself. That's awful. Now this little jack plate on the end here, this is another instant giveaway. That's cheap, thin, nasty, horrible pressed steel. It might not even make steel, who knows. But I can tell you, he's only got to just look at that and compare it against any of the Gibson Les Pauls, at least the decent ones, and there is no comparison. It's an absolute giveaway right away. And you could say, oh yeah, somebody's just changed that, as maybe the seller would. Sometimes they do say that sort of thing. But it's just plain old wrong. And as you can see with the end plate's about twice as thick as the one on the copy. Another little, you know, one of those little guidelines that sort of take it a little bit nearer so you can pick up every one of these differences. Now that's not going to make any difference to the tone or anything like that. But what it is going to do, it's going to give you an inkling that this is a copy. In fact, this particular one is the real deal. And as for these top hats here, you see them. No, they're not right too. Well, I might or might not have some examples to show you that I cut in as we move through this video about those. You know, I only have the ones on the real Les Paul that I've got. But you will see a difference. There's make no question. Compare these knobs. Now I know the guitar's not identical with knobs, but compare these knobs to the ones you saw on the copy. And you'll see that they're very different indeed. In fact, you can read every letter around here, every number, every little divider. These ones are clear on the top. There's none of this sort of slightly different angles than what you see on the real guitar. this is what they should look like if they're real. Now, looking at the bridge pickup, this one says, and I stress it says, rear Epiphone. It says Epiphone. Whether it's an Epiphone, who knows? And even if it is, it's not quite the business, is it? The other thing that gives it away often on these copies is, look at the sort of wiring that's down under here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Quickly. Okay, well now you can see it. Cheap and nasty wiring basically, and that relates to the pickups. If we look in the cavity too, what's in the cavity? Well, really nothing much, except if you look really carefully. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit closer. Okay, well, better than zooming in closer. I'll move the guitar around a bit, but you can see down here how it's been roughly cut out. There's loads of wood there. This shouldn't even be there. Oh, this piece fell off. What do you expect? Well, there it is. That's the sort of thing you'll see on the copy Les Paul under the bridge pickup. But of course, under the neck pickup, that's another story. What you should be seeing under the neck pickup, which we're going to flip off next, is all the proper style of fitting the neck, which Gibson has. Okay, well, I'm not sure you can see that or not, but once again we got an Epiphone. Well, it says Epiphone. It's a bit like everything else. It says Oxo on buses, but they don't sell them, do they? There it is, and there's its cheap piece of wire. And more importantly than the pickup, which you can cut the wires off and put some new ones in, is this hole in the neck. In the body where the neck joint is. Let's zoom around to that and get a little bit closer, shall we? That's all exciting. Now, this guitar has uncovered pickups, as you can see, but they do have the patent applied for thing on the back that you'd expect, and not Epiphone on the back. And if you check what you just saw on the Epiphone ones, because they're called Epiphone ones, but they may not be, they actually look like they've been desoldered and resoldered again. Just take another good look at that section of the video. And, you know, it could be a sign where somebody's actually taken rejected Epiphone pickups, pulled them apart, fixed the fault, soldered them back together and put them in that guitar so they can make an even cheaper guitar. I would not put anything past anybody. Would you? The neck pickup, of course, is the same. You'll notice it has a lower, slightly lower carrier, we'll call it that. You know what I mean, cover, surround, call it what you will. But it's lower down than the one on the Chinese one. It's another little tip. You know, all these little things add up into something you can very easily determine it's genuine or not. Now, it's not so easy to see that sometimes on eBay, but sometimes it is. So it's not conclusive, but it's another one of those points. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip this out and show you inside the neck at the right section of the video. Okay, well, notice on this guitar the pickups actually say Gibson USA there. Now sometimes they've got patent applied for. This one doesn't have them as it happens, but Gibson USA. That's the first thing you want to look for. Now that can be copied too, so you've got to be a little bit careful with that. And don't just look at this type of wiring either. You can see that this has got a plastic coating. You know, most of the older pickups from Les Paul, from Gibson should I say, have a braid on the outside. This is the slightly newer type because they are split pickups on this guitar. Maybe it's not exactly the same as what you might find on a current Les Paul, or indeed a very old one, but it's a very good indication of what you're looking for. And while we're here looking in the cavity, you'll find that it's extremely well machined, not like that other one that was all rough all over. Now some Les Pauls actually show you a portion of the neck tongue that sticks in here. This will be like that, it will machined away. But what you'll find is that, take a good look at the other one, and it's all rough, and round where this is machined here, down in the hole, like down in there, and down in this one, you can't quite see that. They're all extremely smooth and really well finished. On the cheap thing, they're not. They're really, really rough, like they've been just chiselled out somehow. Who knows? That's an extremely good indicator of whether it's a real Les Paul. Well, there it is. Basically, it's just been hacked out. There is no neck protruding in here, none that I can see. It's really rough cut down here. Oh, look, some more wood. Unbelievable. There it is. Oops. Just in case you thought I was kidding. Yeah, it's there on the body. Let's get rid of that. There's no proper mounting of the neck into the body in the way that it should be on a Gibson Les Paul, which this says it is, by the way. Remember that. This says it's Gibson. Now I do want to highlight a few things about this neck. There's nothing Gibson about this neck, even though it looks on the face of it to be exactly like a Gibson Les Paul. No, it's not. No, it isn't. No, it won't be. So let's get that out of the way and agree right off that this is no Gibson neck. Let's look at why. Well, the first thing, if you look at the frets, they all seem nice. Actually, they seem, fitted very well. There they are. But the first problem is that when you get a Gibson Les Paul, you'll see that the plastic, we'll call it that, goes over the end of the frets. Makes them more difficult to change, but at the same time, it separates the men from the boys. And this is one of the boys, a copy. And that's one of the very first things you should ever look for when you're looking at a Gibson Les Paul, is to first of all just make sure that it's got plastic. We'll call it plastic, they call it other things, but it is plastic. Make sure it's over the end of the fret. I'll be showing you that separately. Taking a good look at the neck. First thing I need to point out is that not all Gibson necks are like this. They've started now to remove this plastic on the end. You can see on the end of the fret. So it's just, well, to be honest, it looks a little bit like the Gibson Chinese copy one. Gibson taking that away, I don't think was a good idea. And the reason for that is that the Chinese often never bothered actually to do this because it was very time consuming, Now Gibson have taken that aspect away on the very latest guitars, I think the last couple of years. Really it gets a little bit harder to determine from the neck, or at least the neck edge, whether the guitar's really got a genuine neck on or not. My own view is that it would have been better leaving that on, and maybe in retrospect one of these days Gibson will put it back on. But what it is, it's like part of the binding. The binding used to go in further into the neck, as you can see, and basically they filed this edge to leave the gaps. Obviously it's harder to change the frets later, but when they do that, often you'll see that those get filed off and they put the frets all the way across, just like the newest ones. But it was a good indicator, and that was one of the things I always like to see, especially if the guitar's over a couple of years old. Now the next thing, stupid as it sounds, are these inserts here. These trapezoid inserts. I love saying that, don't you? Trapezoid. Yeah, sounds like, I don't know what it sounds like. Anyway, trapezoid. Say it yourself now. But these trapezoids, aren't like the Gibson ones. These ones, these are just plain old plastic. Whereas the Gibson ones, well, they're not quite as plain old as these are. check them out yourself. You'll see, probably cut in somewhere here, that the difference is quite incredible. And you can feel the difference too. These are extremely shiny, by the way. I don't know how that picks that up on the camera. It doesn't by the look of it, but they are very, very shiny, like glossy plastic. Really, really bad. They're also sunk in further than they should be. You can feel there's a, you know, a discernible sort of sink further than what they normally would be on a Gibson. On a Gibson, they're usually pretty flat with the board, actually. You might have filler on the Gibson, but there's never a sink in like there is on these. That's something else to look out for. What you'll notice with the trapezoid inserts on the genuine guitar, first of all, is that they're very smooth, whereas the ones on the copy aren't smooth. The second thing you'll notice, that I noticed straight away, is that on the copy, these are really shiny, horrible looking things, really shiny. They're sunk in lower than these, and these are absolutely the correct height. There's no ridge or any drop there. It's absolutely exactly as you'd expect to see it. Because that's what you'd expect from Gibson, isn't it? Not something with half a job, which also starts to give away the issues regarding copies. Now, one of the things you find on these copies is when you get to the top of the neck, just about here, that the nut that's fitted is usually a cheap and nasty plastic thing, just exactly like this one is. If you look at it carefully, you can see that all of these grooves, they haven't been cut in there with a file. They're actually moulded in there, and they are pretty awful. You're never really going to see a Gibson Les Paul, a genuine Gibson Les Paul, with this sort of crap on there that's fitted to this guitar. I mean, it's an absolute giveaway along with the other things we've covered up to now. You don't even need to strip the guitar. You can just look at these sort of things and easily determine that something's wrong. And you're darn right there's something wrong. That is an absolute abortion. You should see it from a mile off. Now, looking at the genuine nut, you'll see straight away it's a different material than plastic. Absolutely, it's not plastic. It's very smooth around the edges. It doesn't have something that's almost level across here and then drop off dramatically. It doesn't have 1/8 of an inch grooves in it all the way down. This one's probably bone or something like that. And you can just see that it's completely different than the Chinese copy one. Again, it's a big indicator. Now, the Chinese one could have been changed to one of these, so it's not the only indicator. But there it is. That's the real one that's never been touched. Now, looking at this headstock on camera, it all looks pretty nice. Les Paul model, Gibson. Look closer at that in a moment. 60s style neck. Apparently there was a reissue of this guitar at some stage. Just looking just the same with the 60s style neck and all the rest of it. I don't know which model it is or was emulated, but whichever one it was, this is the one you don't want. Crazy. It's got the sort of snot coloured tuners that you'd expect, but more on them when we turn over. But it's coming back to this piece here that all looks nice. And it isn't all nice, because when you get to look at it at an angle, just about there's a great big dent in the plastic, because this is plastic. Let's see if I can get it on another angle. Well, there you go. As well as the reflection from my house lights, don't worry about them. What really matters is just there. You see, there's like an indentation. And well, it's on the reflection of my lights. You can see that it's indented. In reality, it's very indented, and that's the way it came. Nice. Well, Gibson Les Pauls don't come like that. I've never seen one yet that comes like that, right? So what you're getting is something that's just obviously not quite right. It's a bit like Ted Bundy. He wasn't quite right either. Here's the headstock on the genuine guitar. This is a standard, Les Paul standard, and the other's supposed to be something pretty much the same, I guess. Look carefully at the writing and look carefully at the title. Compare the two if you will. Now they have got better, these Chinese boys, not just Chinese as well I might add, Far East, let's call it that. They have got better at developing these Gibson logos to the point where it can be hard to tell. But what you will notice on any guitar that's an older one is you will notice that usually around the logo it starts to crack. You see that? If you look carefully you'll see it. That cracking doesn't seem to appear on the copies. Probably because of the style of finish that's on the headstock and so on and so forth. Now this is supposed to be Hollywood. I don't mean Hollywood as in here's the stars. I mean Hollywood. Know her? Yeah, here it is anyway. It's usually dark black like this, and what you tend to find on most of the others is they've been painted black. Just a regular paint, you know. And one thing I can tell you is there's absolutely nothing on here that indicates anything like you know, the sort of faults that we've just seen on the Far Eastern copy guitar. You don't see things like that on a real Les Paul. Full stop, you don't see them. They never get past Gibson's QA. Now you know, one of the things that these guys, these copiers are getting better at is that actually the logo, and I have to say, just feeling the logo and looking at the design, it isn't really that far off. It's designed well enough so that Mr. Ordinary Guy who wants to buy one of these is actually going to be very disappointed a little bit later down the road. In fact, you're going to be so disappointed you're going to want to smash the guitar into 1,000 pieces. Indeed, as the buyer of this one felt. When you've been ripped off for $1,000 or $1,500 or £600 to £800, £1,200, trust me, you don't feel good. You feel really annoyed. And I know that he does. And I would too. In fact, I'd be taking this guy, the seller, through court no matter what. But that's another story. Okay, there we are around the back. And you can see the serial number. Let me see if I can read that off for you. It's 00170423. Made in USA, it says. Well, I can tell you just straight away from looking at that that is not right. And there's a number of things that make it not right, but the actual number isn't one of them. If you actually go and check out 00170423 on the internet or on Gibson's site, you'll find that that's a genuine guitar serial number. Oh, so what did they do? Well, they stole it. You might find plenty of Gibson Les Pauls of this ilk, this design, this model, on the internet with the same old number. So save the number, whatever you do. Somebody's got the real one, but don't worry about that. He's probably somewhere in the east. Let's say that. It also says made in USA with little dots in between. You can see them. Right. It's all good, but not really. It's not really good at all. Because the first thing that I notice on this is that all of these numbers and letters have been tapped in over the top of the varnish. So what you end up with is these sort of raised bits that have been sort of rubbed down and polished off. Now on the real Gibson Les Pauls I've seen, I don't see that over the top of the varnish. I see it in the neck and then varnished over. It's another sort of telltale giveaway. If it's not varnished over, something's wrong, right? Even if everything else was right, I think then generally speaking, especially on the guitars that you're looking at like this one, the newer sort of what it is, you know, then you're probably looking at a copy. And when you do look on the back of a genuine Gibson, you'll find that, sure, it says made in USA. It looks the same. It's got the little dots between the US and the A. And it's got the serial number. which they steal from a real Gibson. But one thing that you just notice is that these were done underneath the lacquer, and then it's been sprayed over subsequently. So you feel that sometimes you can hardly even feel them. They've been lacquered that much. But on this guitar, with it being a sort of nitro finish, it's very, you still feel it, but you know it's underneath the lacquer. Oh, look, a dent. So that's one thing to look out for, no matter what the number says, and no matter whether it says made in USA right or not. It might not even have that on some of the slightly older guitars. But the point is that it's under the lacquer, and that's something I don't think they do that. I haven't seen one that does that, but it's possible they could. Now to these tuners. On the face of it, they all look, it says on here, Gibson Deluxe. Well, they sort of look the same, but they're not quite. And the fact is that if you're used to looking at these, or you compare them with a real Gibson, there really is little to no comparison. Although, like I said, it's sort of the same. The biggest thing that gives it away to me, and this is only my view, bear in mind, I'm just like you, am I normal? I don't know. Here we go. Take a look there, right there, and you'll see where the metal's been bent over, that way and that way. There's this big fat gap, right there. See it? Right, well on the Gibson tuners that I've seen, there's no gap. They're all neatly finished off. They're not at all like these. These are crap. Look at them. Look for the gaps. Look for the loosely bent stuff and all that sort of thing. And there's more, of course. When you come and look down this way, these are not in a line in the same way that a Gibson would be. In fact, they sort of bent off a little bit here and there. They sort of higgledy-piggledy like this. Yeah, you get the idea. I'm not going to spend time doing that. But I just want you to see that they're not quite straight. The Gibson ones are. Or at least my Gibson ones are. Now, there's not really much chance of comparing these tuners with the ones on the, on the Chinese or Far Eastern copy. These are Grover, and the others say Gibson. They're not Gibson. I think they're Cluson, aren't they? But it doesn't really matter. They're just different. But looking at the quality of these, you can see these are genuine. You can see the others are not genuine from the things I've already pointed out. So I'm not going to dwell on these too long because it's a different thing, really. Well, it's a very nice looking piece of wood, isn't it? Here it is. It's all nice. Looks almost like Carina, sort of. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was a Carina Les Paul. But it isn't. And something else you want to look on the neck, which is not common. Well, I've never seen one actually. Is this here. If you look really carefully, you can see there's like a line, and it sort of goes round there, down the other side. And right there, that's a join. It's a join of this piece of wood to this piece of wood. So it's been made in two pieces and stuck together. Well, I've seen it on Ibanez's and loads of guitars, but to be honest, I've never really seen it on a Les Paul. In fact, I've never seen it on a Les Paul. Maybe your Les Pauls are different than mine, but the genuine things that I have don't do that. Never have done, never will do. It's called a scarf joint. So look for the scarf joint to see if that's there. That's a real good giveaway, I think. Unless all these experts come to me and tell me, yeah, they're all built that way, Tony. Well, mine aren't. Maybe I've got something rare. Yeah. Now here's the top end of the neck, where on the Chinese copy you had what they call a scarf joint. Remember me pointing that out? Well, you will, it just happened. And you can see on the Gibson one, there's no scarf joints here. It's just all made from one big piece of wood and hacked out and carved. So they don't join that piece to this piece anywhere. Sometimes there's a thing here, like a little bump, and they call that a volute. And the reason that's there is to strengthen the neck, because on some of the older ones, funnily enough like this one, they used to break across here. And you'll find the older guitars, particularly the sort of 59, 60s era, I think it was, could be wrong, some break, have been repaired. You can repair them properly, but you know, so they don't fail again. But I personally wouldn't buy one with a crack. Fact is, no volute, and this is mahogany. Now let's move to the joint section of the neck to the body. You can see it looks pretty similar to me there, but there is something that actually gives this away as well. For the eagle-eyed of you, or the people that know better, or the people that don't know better. And I'm only talking about the stuff that I think is wrong. I don't see it on my Les Pauls, the genuine ones, so I suspect that what I'm talking about is probably correct. If you look here, right here, once again, you'll see that this piece of wood here is different than this piece of wood here. That's been stuck on from there upwards. This piece is the original neck wood, whatever it may be. So, different coloured wood, different coloured wood. You don't get that on Les Pauls. You just don't get it. End of story. Now this neck joint. Well, let me come round this side. That's better. Well, if you take a look at this neck joint, take a look at this in comparison to what you've just seen, and it's actually slightly different shape. That's the first thing I noticed about it. The rest of it looks pretty sort of similar, and it's quite hard to tell the difference, except that there's no wood join here. On the Chinese one, there's a piece of wood that comes across here that's clearly been stuck on, because they don't want to machine all this extra wood that you get down here. So they stuck this extra piece of wood across here, and it's a different colour, and it's a different grain, and it stands out like a sore thumb. That never happens on Gibson Les Pauls, or none that I've seen. I'm not saying it can never happen, but your chances are, if it's got that across it, yeah, look elsewhere. This one is genuine. Now looking at the body generally, at the back, it all looks nice. One nice piece of wood. It's all fabulous. That's exactly like what you'd expect to see on a Les Paul, isn't it? One fabulous piece of wood. Once again, I'd say it's either looking like mahogany or carina or one or the other, something similar. But you never really know. Yeah, fabulous. Really nice finish. So what separates the men from the boys? Well, we'll come to that a bit later. But I'm just going to whip off this cover and this cover, just to show you what's under there, so that you're in no illusions as to what you think's under there. You'll see what's under there and how good or bad it is. Now on a lot of the earlier Gibsons, they're just plain old wire, and some of the latest Gibsons have even got PCBs in there. There's no problem with that, and it just keeps the wiring all tidy and neat and nice. What you don't see, you don't see things like this. It's just not, it's not very good. You can tell the wiring isn't quite the right wiring, and the pots, well, they're a no name. That's another giveaway. No name, no much or anything on them. Just looking at that, and we've still got big fat chunks of wood down in there, as you can see. And I just found, I'll leave it down there. Blobs of solder, see that? If you can, let's move it around a bit. I'm not sure you can see that's there. So overall inside here, it's pretty crap. What I liked was the Gibson logo. How bad's that? Now you could fix all that, I suppose. Take all this out, take the pickups out, but there's some other issues, isn't there? Now, to be honest, this isn't a very good example of what you might find inside a switch cover of a Gibson Les Paul. It's well known that the Gibson Jimmy Page Les Paul has switches that you can push and pull on the front of the guitar, and you can see that these are actually pots with switches. But they also have these other things stuck on them, so they're like a tag board, so that the wiring of the Jimmy Page can be done as they wanted it, I guess. But more importantly, take a real good look around inside and how it's machined. And you'll notice also that it's got sort of black paint in there, and that black paint is to reduce hum, believe it or not. Even though it has humbuckers, it still has the black conductive sort of shield paint that's in there. So don't really look at these, expect to see regular pots, but they're usually regular pots from people like CTS or these sort of people, and they usually have a date code on the pots. Now, if like the other guitar, the Chinese guitar, you'll notice there were no date codes, no manufacturer, no this, no that, and I dare say if you compare the two together that theirs was slightly smaller than the real deal, which is often the case. So don't look too close at this unless you really want to see how a Jimmy Page Les Paul was actually wired in 1995, which is what this one is. That's something I don't take the cover off very often. This one somewhere is not wired correctly, but what it does on this particular guitar is it makes it sound better, funny enough. Anyway, enough of this frivolousness. Let's just take one look at the cover. The cover is shiny. It's also shiny on the back, and it's also got these moulding marks. There's one and there's the other, so even down to the plate you could probably pin down whether it's a genuine plate or not, because what you'll find usually on the other plates is they're just pressed out of a piece of plastic, whereas on these are actually, they look to me like they're actually moulded into this shape. Another important feature, especially when you're trying to figure out whether it's real or not. Looking inside here, this is where the switch is on the front. You'll see that, well, once again, we've got loads of nasty wiring and cheap switches. And another thing, when you actually look at that, the Gibson one isn't like that. I've never seen a Gibson one like this one actually. It's tapered underneath, if you can see that, and it's shiny, which most of them usually are. Well, this one's a nice flat mat on the outside, which I haven't really seen that before on a Gibson Les Paul. I've seen it on the copies, haven't you? Well, in this case the wiring might look superficially like the copy. What you find in reality is that because this has got pickups that can be switched into single coils, switchable stuff, the wiring is different than you might find on a regular Les Paul. However, take a good look at the switch, because the switch is nothing like the one we saw on the other guitar. You'll notice first of all this one nearly touching the top of the area that it can be in, whereas the other one was lower down. It's a cheap switch on the other one, it's the real deal on this one. There's no bad machining in here, it's all good stuff. Those are the things you really need to look for. They all contribute to this giving away. You'll notice on this as well that it's shiny on the outside and it's shiny on the inside. Theirs was matte on the outside and shiny on the inside. Another little indicator. Maybe not, maybe someone's got Gibson Les Pauls with, matte covers on. I haven't seen them, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. But what I'd be looking for are all these little things put together. But one of the most immediate and damning things about this particular guitar are the number of pieces of wood that they use throughout the body. I've counted about 5 or 6 pieces, of which I've never seen a Les Paul with 5 or 6 pieces of body wood. No, you don't sort of get that. If you notice on the back, there's no joints. So what they've done is they've nicely veneered the back so that you don't see the wood joints. Very clever, not clever enough. Now, taking an overall look at the back of the guitar, you'll find that there's no pieces joined together, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 pieces or 8 pieces in the guitar body of a Gibson Les Paul. It's true that they did make some with a couple of pieces in. I have seen them with 3 pieces in, but it's not that common of the ones that I've seen. The ones I tend to see, or the ones I own indeed, all seem to have a single piece of wood, or maybe 2 maximum. You'll also notice that it's a different colour than the other guitar. This is mahogany. Okay, it could have a varnish on it there that's darkening it up, but I doubt it somehow. I think that's the way it comes and that's what you get. And away you go. Just something to indicate a genuine guitar from a non-genuine. Again, there are lots of differences. Looking at the back of the guitar, actually in this case it's very difficult to see if there's any other pieces of wood in there. But I can tell you, from what I see, there isn't any. It's one piece of wood right the way across, and it's all nice. Compare it to the one you've just seen. And even where you look where the cutaway is, I mean, they're very clever guys. They've got this binding going around the top that's not following the bottom, you know, like the newer stuff. It's actually got that little piece that never got covered on certain Les Pauls. You can see that. So the copying action of these people it's intensive and it's determined. Again, looking at the cutout area of the guitar, you'll notice on this one that the binding actually goes thicker in this area. Now it's only on the early guitars, I believe, or the reissues, or whatever you want to call them, that the binding stayed thin, went up here and came down. And you'll notice on that other one, it's not like this, it's like the other style. Now, you can have either style, but the fact is, well, this is what's on this one. And this is what's on, typically on all the ones that I have. Again, although you can't see here too well, it's one piece of wood. Not really much more I can say about that. Well, there it is. And if you've watched the video so far and seen the cut-ins from the Gibson Jimmy Page that I've got, well, it's a different guitar. It's still a Gibson Les Paul. And it's a Gibson Les Paul made in the way that it should be, compared to what this is. This will never be a real Gibson Les Paul. It is a copy. It's intended to deceive. It's as simple as that. You know, what more can you say about it? Well, you could say a lot of things, actually. Well, what could you do with this thing? Well, for starters, you could take off those tuners and throw them in the bin and get some nice, genuine ones. You could take this off, put the real deal in there. You could take these pickups off and put some decent ones in, as opposed to these Epiphone copies. It's unbelievable. You could get rid of the bridge, get rid of the string anchor plate and its screws. You could get rid of these knobs and everything behind them, all that crap wiring. You're not going to fix the wood. You can actually even get a headstock that's a genuine Gibson one and stick it over the top, if you really wanted to. Well, you're still going to be stuck with what? Well, you're going to still be stuck with a guitar that is a copy. It's not just a copy, it's intended to deceive you. It'll deceive you like it deceived this guy big time. And it'll cost you money for something that's probably cost $100 or $110 off production. And if you think I'm wrong, you mark my words, I'm not. It's probably cost even less than that. This particular one, at least they made a reasonable attempt at it. Some of the ones I've seen are just plain and simple awful. Now with those cut-ins from the Jimmy Page Les Paul that I have, you'll see the differences. They become stark when you see two guitars together. But like I said, if you're looking at this guitar on the internet, you know, on the face of it, from what you see out there, not doing a comparison, this guitar will look just like a Gibson Les Paul. And I tell you now, you can very easily get ripped off and lose a lot of money. Because nobody's going to give you anything for this, are they? And of course the other thing you see on the internet, on YouTube and everywhere else, are these guys that get these really cheap pieces of crap in. They get them in and they try and convince you how great they are. It's right out of the box. I've seen it and heard it all day. It's nonsense. They don't come that way. Here they are. This is how they come. This is what you get. And this is one of the good ones. You want to see the bad ones, boys. Honestly, you would make a mistake that is beyond comparison to anything else that you'll ever buy. Unless it's one of the Ibanez ones where you can't get the cable in the back. 7BWH, which we've looked at on my website, TonyMckenzie.com. Now, as you'll probably notice in this video, I haven't actually used the C word, China. Although a lot of them do come from there. But they also come from these other places too. They're usually Far East. I'm afraid to say, the Far East is really great at copying, but it's less really great at innovation. And that is part of the problem of what you see right here. Instead of this company going out and making their guitar, they copy. And they copy to try and sell product. That's the only reason they copy. On the back of somebody else that's successful. Which I think is just plain wrong. Especially if you were Gibson. You'd think it was plain wrong too. But Gibson aren't alone. I'm sure Fender do it and loads of other people. Well, not Fender, but Fender rip-offs will be out there just the same. As many other brands, like I've seen many PRS copies and they're just as crap. So don't think it's limited to Gibson copies, because it isn't. Doesn't matter which one of the cheap guitars you want to get. They're all so-so. I can hear all these guys on the internet now. He's talking rubbish. This guitar's great. You would say that, wouldn't you? You bought one. Oh, classic. So, to sum up, listen, if you want a Les Paul, buy a Les Paul. Don't buy this and think you're going to turn it into a Les Paul. You're not. It's not going to be the same. You're going to spend an awful lot of money on this guitar trying to make it like a Les Paul. You should have bought a second-hand Les Paul. It's a real one. Then you haven't got all this other rubbish to put up with. So, go and spend some money on it. By the time you've finished, honestly, yeah, you'll be cheaper, but it won't be the same. It won't sound the same either. It'll be sort of similar. It'll be an also-ran. The other thing I like to hear is where people turn to me and they say, oh yeah, but what about Slash? He didn't use a genuine Gibson Les Paul. He used one of them Derrig guitars. It's a copy. That's what they'll say. The only problem is this, that Mr. Derrig doesn't copy like this. Mr. Derrig makes a Les Paul, right? Go and ask Slash. Go and ask Mr. Derrig, he'll tell you. They make Les Pauls. This is not a Les Paul. What this is designed to fool you by looking at it. Because, believe it or not, a lot of people will buy a guitar purely by looking at it. They don't plug it in and play it. They don't this, they don't that. They just look at it. Oh yeah, I'll have that one. You don't think that's true? Trust me, every internet sale is absolutely that true. So the Derrig guitar, yeah, it's as good as the real deal. Slash will tell you it's better, but who knows? Becomes subjective. But the quality isn't subjective. The quality is either quality or it's not. And this is not the quality that you want. You think you want it. Wow, look at this. It just looks fabulous. It's fabulous. No, it isn't. So I want to thank the guy, he knows who he is, for lending me this, because I would never buy one. I just wouldn't buy it because I know what it is before you buy it. I want to thank him for that because, it cost him a lot of money, but he stood up to it and said, well, I'll learn by my mistakes, so to speak. And you should learn by your mistakes too, or at least learn by this video, because this video is intended to tell you the way it really is. I have nothing to gain by saying this is great or it's crap. As it happens, it's on the crap side. So I don't sell them, I don't make them. Guess what? It's crap. Anyway, that's that guy. Pity he got ripped off. Don't forget to visit TonyMckenzie.com, where we'll be doing another sort of review of this, but a written style with loads of photos, so you get a better view sometimes than in video. And my YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/JohnnyMcKenzie.com. You can find me there. I think it's about 120 plus videos now. And still going. I'm not doing as fast as I was, but that's for a lot of reasons, including the camera that you're looking at. I think when this video starts, the quality's not quite there, but it's the first time I use the camera. It's a bit of an upmarket thing. Yeah. Till next time, rock and roll. See you again. And listen, whatever you do, don't buy one of these. You've been warned. Rock and roll.